Welcome to Red Sky Ministries, Sword of the Spirit, and my name is Chris. Today is part 3 of a 4-part episode in Truth, looking at truth in the age of deception. Last episode we wrapped up, we were talking about how people use themselves as a fixed point of reference instead of God, and how that leads to chaos, because ultimately if nobody has authority over everybody else, all men are equal, and you have conflict, who decides who wins that conflict? The ultimate question is, says who? If you tell somebody else you're wrong, morally, what have you, that's not true, they can rightly come back and say, says who? Who made you the authority? Okay? So, and a lot of people will say in that context, they've said to me, well, the collective or society determines that. It's not the individual. Well, that doesn't work either. You can't go by what the majority says. They can't define truth and what's morally right and wrong. It just defines what they say is right and wrong. Let me give you some examples. There's Nazi Germany, right? They slaughtered 6 million Jews. You know, were they right or wrong? You look at Saudi Arabia, where they slaughter Christians. There are no churches in Saudi Arabia. They behead Christians. They behead and stone to death gays. Women are treated like cattle. They can't vote. They can't drive cars. They can't leave their home without a male family member. Okay? If they're raped, then they're stoned right along with the people that raped her. They're treated like sex slaves. Is that right? Well, the majority of Islam says it is. And in the United States, abortion is legal. 50 million kids slaughtered in the room. Is that right or wrong? The majority says it's right. Okay? So you can't use higher authority. Look at the playground growing up, okay, at school. Who had the authority in the playground? Who determined what was right and what was wrong? Well, it wasn't the kid that actually knew the truth or the smartest one or what have you. It was the bully. It was the one who had the most power. He determined what was right and wrong, and that's what goes on in society today. So you can't really look to the collective or society or majority to determine what is morally right and wrong or what's true or not. When people look to themselves as a fixed point of reference for truth, they come up with some pretty bizarre ideas, okay? And they say some things which are crazy. I'll give you a couple examples. Jodie Foster says, I absolutely love religions and rituals. Even though I don't believe in God, we celebrate pretty much every religion in our family with our kids. Well, that's crazy. The kids will grow up, why are you doing this? If you don't believe in that God, why are you following their rituals? It's crazy. Katharine Hepburn, I want you to think about this, says, I'm an atheist and that's it. I believe that there is nothing we can know except we should be kind to each other and do what we can for each other. My question to Katharine is, how do we know that? You just said you're an atheist, you don't believe in God. What's your fixed point of reference? Who says that we should be kind to each other? Right? Emma Thompson says, I'm an atheist. I'm offended by some of the things said in the Bible, and I refute them. Well, Emma, what a fixed point of reference are you using to refute the Bible? Why are you offended by that? What fixed point of reference besides yourself are you using to determine that the Bible is wrong? Well, she doesn't have any. She's using her own mind. And Lance Armstrong says that if there is a body or presence standing there on Judgment Day, and he's standing before this body or presence, he hopes that he would be judged on whether he lived a true life, not on whether he believed a certain book. Well, a couple questions for you, Lance. One is, who determines what a true life is? You? Who made you the moral authority? Right? If you don't believe in God, what defines? What are you using as a fixed point of reference to define what a true life is? And Lance, if you're standing before God on Judgment Day, do you think he's going to use your criteria for what a true life is in determining whether you should spend eternity with him or in hell? Or do you think he's going to use his criteria, his fixed point of reference? Well, I mean, think it through, Lance. he's not going to use what you think is right and wrong to judge you. He's going to think he's going to use what he thinks is right and wrong. He's going to use himself as a fixed point of reference. And professors today say insane things. They teach crazy things to their students. Here's a couple things they say. Professors will tell university kids, nobody has the right to tell you what's right and wrong. Nobody. Okay? And yet, then you'll turn around and grade their papers. Right? Well, the student, right, they could come back and say, who are you to grade my paper? You just got through saying nobody can tell me what's right and wrong. Doesn't that include you? Okay? They also say, professors will say, everybody makes up their own reality and decides what the truth is. Okay? Well, if that's true, professor, and you've got a problem with me being a Christian and my morals, well, since you made up your own reality, if you have a problem with me, take it up with yourself. It's your reality, right? Don't talk to me. People don't think through what they're told, but they just take in what the professor feeds them at face value, and they don't think about it. Okay? And then there's evolution. Schools have taught evolution for decades, and yet if you look at evolution, it's easily refutable. And in evolution, if you think about it, they teach bizarre things. They teach that kids came from primordial soup, migrated to wild apes, and became a man. In other words, from goo to you by way of the zoo. They teach kids that you came from wild apes, there is no God, there's no accountability for anything you do in your life. When you die, you're dead, whatever. You decide what's right and wrong. You decide the truth, and nobody has the right to tell you otherwise. And then they're amazed. They can't believe that an 11-year-old kid would kill another kid just for their iPhone. Why would they do that? Well, why wouldn't they? You just told them, you just taught them that they came from apes. They're not accountable to anybody, including God. Do what you want in your life. You decide what's right and wrong. You're not going to be held accountable. Nobody has the right to tell you you're wrong. Okay? Now think about that. So that's what happens in society when you look to yourselves as a fixed point of reference for truth instead of God, instead of the Word of God. You come up with some crazy ideas about what's real, what's morally right and wrong. And most of those views are indefensible. If you think through them, they're self-contradicting. When somebody says to you, and this happens all the time to me, somebody comes up to you and says it's wrong to impose your morals on another person. The answer to that is, look at them and say, am I wrong? If they say to you, well, yeah, you're wrong, then they're contradicting themselves. And if they say to you, well, I guess you're not wrong, then say, well, why do you got a problem with me then? You see where that goes? If you think it through, it's only when you use God as a fixed point of reference that you're going to have peace and harmony in the world, that there's not going to be conflict, that moral standards are going to be set by God, so there will be no conflict as to what those are in the world. And they're never going to change, which is kind of nice. So in the next episode, the final episode, we're going to summarize the last 3 episodes, and I'm going to give you a couple key concepts, one incredibly important one, and I'm sure you'll want to stay tuned for that. So look forward to seeing you next time on Sword of the Spirit.